Hi, and welcome to a short little stream of consciousness on Thursday, May the 11th. Can't call it a podcast. I guess I'm just checking in on myself to see if this is still alive, and I think it is. I'm not entirely sure how I am supposed to feel about especially how the mainstream media, the journalists that have had access through their jobs, excuse me, at the with the mainstream media corporation, that they're now being shut out by the Trump administration, right? They're not being shown the standard courtesies from the White House, like when foreign dignitaries are visiting the White House. The first example, I'm not sure if it's the first, but the most blatant example is when the Russian ambassador and Russian foreign minister showed up at the White House, was it yesterday? Right after Trump had fired Comey, excluding the usual White House press corps, but apparently let the Russian foreign minister and somebody from the Russian state press tweet out pictures about the meeting from inside the Oval Office. And that has, of course, gotten the press, or at least the part of the press that I can see, right? And yes, I have cut my cable bill. I stream Fox News, MSNBC, and CNN, and or whatever else from YouTube whenever the Russians are putting up a channel. And why am I saying Russians? Because when the screen goes to black, it looks like Russian text to me. Either way, so I can't, but certainly in the New York Times and in Washington Post and all those mainstream medias, they are, writing column after column about, how this is unprecedented, and how can you got to respect the press, and they should be there, and all these things. And I totally agree with that. The problem is, of course, that these journalists have been doing the bidding of their corporate masters basically pushing the environment or the agenda or the people via lobbyists and so forth into the environment and giving the policies that led us to a situation where a person like Trump has become president. I mean, how many wars, let's take it back, how many wars have the mainstream media lied us into throughout our nation's history? Right? How many times have the editors or the owners of a newspaper called up their contacts? And I mean, by calling up their contacts, they probably just reached out at some table back in the day and said, a dinner table, and said, that little hobby I have called the New York Times, yeah, somebody there wants to print a story about it. Can we do that? Is that okay with you? Their excuse, of course, being that, oh my God, they don't really want to hurt national security. It's not their job. It's not the press's job to worry about whether or not they're hurting national security. It is their job to find out whether or not the rich and the powerful, our political leaders, are living by the same rules that we are and by the rules that governs the jobs that they have. And they have totally and utterly abdicated that responsibility. So it makes it hard for me to get in an uproar when this kind of stuff happens. And I should be, and you should be too. But I mean, Jesus Christ, where have these people been? I mean, have you seen Andrea Mitchell from MSNBC trying to reinvent herself as a real beat journalist? I'm going to go get the answers, yelling at Trump and trying. Andrea Mitchell, who throughout her entire career has had access to the most powerful people in America and interviewed them, from Clapper to Fed chairman. I mean, she's married to a Fed chairman. Wall Street tycoons, members of government. And the highest mark on her resume is that she was thrown out of an interview by the Sudanese president, or whatever he is, for asking a question about the genocide that was going on at the time. You can't find one story that she has done on domestic policy challenging the establishment in the way that they're conducting business and the consequences of the way that they're conducting business. You can't find one. But you know what you can find? Liberal Andrea Mitchell running and screaming at the president and Secretary of State Tillerson. You know what you can find if you open up Andrea Mitchell's closet? You can find that she was the one. She was part, or at least partly, part of the people that helped Dick Cheney leak Valerie Blame's identity to the press. You remember Valerie Blame, right? You remember her husband writing an op-ed in the New York Times saying that the story about the yellow cake uranium, one of the 9,958 different reasons that we were given by the same mainstream press, that we were given by our leaders and just without critique fed to the public by the mainstream media, right? Well, that yellow cake story, or the yellow cake wasn't true. The silos wasn't true. And they couldn't have that, right? So Dick Cheney needed to out his wife, a very, very, very expensive CIA asset. Now, you could care about that or not. If I cared about it back then, I care about it back now. So I cared about it back then, so I care about it now. That was an unnecessary exposure of a valuable CIA asset. As far as I remember, and it's been a while, but I think that she was working on nuclear proliferation. And we surely do not need competent people taking care of that, right? So a journalist was apparently arrested for yelling questions at a health secretary. At the health secretary, his name slips my mind at this second. And again, we should all be up in arms, but it is hard when we sit down and remember that lie after lie after lie after lie that served corporations, that pay for the advertisement on these TV channels and on these newspapers, were just left standing and never challenged. The questions were never asked, so that a whole group of people in this population can be misinformed. I don't know, but I think most Christian people would find it objectionable if the real cost of Apple and Cisco and all the other giants being able to have $3 trillion sitting, not working at home, but sitting overseas. I think that most people, even conservative Christian people, would find it objectionable if they actually knew and were shown the kind of conditions up and down the supply chain from the beginning to end was needed in order for these companies to create this kind of profit. That was some clumsy English, but that's why this is a test. All right, this got a lot longer than I wanted to, and certainly not as coherent, but at least it was done, and I actually think that it freaking recorded. I don't know. Of course we should be up in arms. Of course our journalist needs access. But, my God, these people, these journalists, the ones that we see on TV, the ones that write for all the big newspapers, they're not it. They're not it. As a matter of fact, if they have a job there, you know they're not it. You don't get to be on TV if you ask the questions that we need asked. Liberals, Democrats, if you're human and you live in America, you're not being served. We are not being served by these people. And somehow we must stand up in defense of them and their access. Yeah, it sucks. But that's the way it is. All right. Yeah, this will post today. And I've said before that I will do more, and I have done, but I certainly hope that it will be more frequently than this. I hope you have a great day. Happy Thursday. Weekend's coming up. Be safe.